Hello, and welcome to the Alpha Sprint demo for the Whale Skull project. My name is Danush, and I'm the project manager.
My name is Thomas, and I'm the technical lead and database manager.
I'm Martin, and I'm the QA lead and front-end developer.
And I'm Nicole, and I'm the business analyst, and I also work on the front end. So, in order to really understand what we accomplished for this sprint, we really need to first explain the concept behind our application to showcase why our design choices were significant. Our application utilizes two photometric measurement evaluators, morphometrics and collatrix, as the engine for our output. These algorithms originated from several peer-reviewed studies that applied essential calculations to images of whales based on images taken by drones at a non-oblique angle. Our application then aims to help users manually map their whales within a browser. Here you can kind of see what I mean. We know the pixel dimension based on the sensor width and the image width that's from the image actually taken by the camera, and using altitude and focal length, we're able to basically project onto the pixels of the image itself. Here you can see the essential parameters that we need to put into our application then, so that we can really measure these whales accurately. Some of the essential features, obviously you need a primary key and the image ID, but also the focal length, altitude, pixel dimensions are very important. And then you can measure these things broadly, both the entire whale and pieces of the whale, like for example, the fluke, which is like a fancy name for the tail, you can measure specifically. In order for our application to truly be successful, we need to be able to measure both the length, the width, and any combination thereof on the individual pieces of a whale. Okay, so let's take you through a basic demo of our site, and here I am sharing my screen. Danush will show you a little bit more about the specifics of the vector environments afterwards, but we wanted to show you the basic application. A lot of it's been manually tested. So you guys must be familiar by now with how this works. We have a drag and drop. Here is a basic image. We now have a full screen view, so you can see that same image blown up into full screen. And basically, you can add line segments based on how it works. I'm not going to go very precise right now, but here you can see that I can generally map out my whale. And I can drag and drop as I please. If I wanted to apply more advanced morphometrics tools, here I have a toolbar where I could do measure widths, measure lengths, or a Bezier fit, essentially like giving me additional functionality. And here for the user features, we now have a sign-in with a little copyright that we do not have, and a register. So all you need is a first name, last name, email address, and password. We're not really worried about people misusing this user features, because our assumptions is we're going to have maybe around 150 users at max. But the email address is mainly so that people can contact each other if they want to make their designs public later on. And this is basically how the website works, and you can go back to our main screen.
Here's a sort of updated vector drawing environment we have. It's still bare bones, and we're working on fully integrating that with the front end. But now you can see we have different buttons for specific measurements. So if we wanted to say make an angle measurement, then I would only be able to draw 2 vectors, because that's all we need to comprise an angle. If we wanted to make an area measurement, we can make any number of segments we want, just ensuring that the polygon is eventually closed. And again, all these are draggable and also deletable. If we wanted to make a length measurement, we can go ahead and do that like this. And say we were interested on measuring specifically like the curvature of this whale, which researchers are always interested in measuring, we can enable the Bezier fit option to have more precise measurements. So as I draw segments along the curve of this whale, once I'm done, we've created a curve that better fits to the overall curvature of this whale. And we're using NumPy Python packages in the backend to do all the calculations to get the points that best fit this curve. And so this is a functionality we have right now. We're working on adding a measuring widths option, which will add segments along this Bezier curve and allow users to drop specific points to get width measurements. But this is very much close to the full functionality we'll need for the complete project.
Due to uncontrollable circumstances on our client's end, he was generally unavailable. So we weren't really able to complete user testing this past week, but intend to do it this next week. And we already have, I think, up to 10 people lined up to test our site next week. So we're moving on that end, but instead we met with our client once he became available and generally heard feedback that was positive about how we're clean and consistent with his vision for the project. Martin got some ideas during our meeting and he'd love to share them with you guys about what we're going to do in our last sprint.
The dashboard allows each user to save and browse the results of their measurements. You can see how the feature will look in this preliminary concept. We have the wells organized by tags and with some summary information. We're looking to potentially add nice quality of life features in the future, such as a map and a shortcut to measure directly from the dashboard. This is something in development and it will be integrated into a project in the upcoming sprint.
So for our testing this week, we have our testing report here. We've added some more test cases because we've added more functionalities to our API. So as you can see, we have around 59% total coverage, and we need to work on views, models, and serializers. And again, that's because of the additional functionality we added. So as we can see, a negative path here is the specific account deletion. The reason why it's supposed to be ending up as a 404 is because this primary key doesn't actually end up existing for that deletion to happen. And since it's passed, that's correct. Additionally, we have a image update API call that is bad because, again, that primary key for the image does not exist. So it ends up being 404. So as for our manual test that we like to do, we like to create accounts. So this account should work because we have a username, a password, and a password 2, except that our password 2 is not the same as the first password. So this is generally during registration. So if we post this, it'll say the passwords must match. Now, if I make it so that the passwords do match, well then we should get a successfully registered new user, which is correct. For our design justification this week, one major design choice that we realized was that we needed to update this morphometric software that's primarily using Python packages to do the front end and back end. And so we split it up. So the front end will be using React, which we essentially created this week. And the back end will be getting those calculations done through requests from the front end to the Django REST API in the back end. So the other alternative would be to just directly port over the original code. But from our analysis, it seemed that the tool with the front end Python packages would just take too long to run in a browser. So by updating the tool, not only are we getting the website to run smoother, but we're also enabling future developers to add new features and debug stuff more easily due to just a more friendly and modern tech stack.
So here's our burn down chart for the sprint and the timeline. As you can see, it looks pretty horrendous, but some of this is due to the fact that the issues that we had created and set at the beginning of sprint sort of quickly changed based on the priorities that we had after discussing with our client and preparing for user testing. We wanted to focus on the features that would allow us to have the vector drawing environment working, as well as the math behind it working, because that's essentially the crux of the app, and anything else would be additional features. So there was a lot of pivoting that we did, and as a result, some issues that we started working on were left unfinished, and some were forced to be punted to the next sprint. So again, this doesn't provide the best representation of our work, but I think overall in the sprint, we did a good job. We just need to do a better job of tracking our issues and probably meeting together to discuss priorities of issues at the start of the sprint.
And now, for a brief retrospective, we asked ourselves what went well. Well, we thought we did great progress with Sprint. We're very happy. We did a lot of foundational work, such as user accounts, implementing morphometric calculations, and creating a myriad of UI components, all of which sets up the groundwork for a successful next sprint, where we integrate and polish everything together. We're also very happy that we're keeping our client, Dr. David Johnston's morale high. He's generally very happy and positive about the project, which for us is an important metric. He's ready to share a product with the rest of his lab in the upcoming weeks. In terms of what didn't go so well, we're still working on our inter-team communication. For example, this sprint, each one of us worked on by themselves in many branches, and some team members had trouble following the work of others. This will be improved next sprint when we prefix the names of our branches with our own names or Duke IDs. One of our goals as well for the sprint was to be better about documenting our code. But due to time constraints, we did not get sufficient documentation code coverage of our code, or one that we're satisfied with. So we'll work on this in the upcoming sprint to reach a code coverage of about 80 to 90%, which we think is a reasonable goal.
So for this beta sprint, which is pretty much the final sprint we have for the semester, we want to make sure that we have all the functionality working that researchers need and that our client wants at minimum. So that means having the vector drawing environment completely integrated with the front end, allowing users to make those measurements and get the appropriate calculations from the back end. So making sure we not only have the measurement drawing capability installed, but also the math as well, which we are very close to doing. So that's something that Thomas and I will jointly work together. We're hoping that if we have time, we can have more extensive features available for the user in terms of saving their data and creating a profile where they can see previous results and measurements taken, as well as specific metadata that profile users might want to have specific to their account. And then finally, we want to ensure that after we conduct user testing, that we're able to incorporate that feedback and making the overall tool as clean and as useful as possible for any researchers that use the tool. So that's our plan for the next sprint.